And to a few words about compromise, the common verb of action and reaction in the Congress of the United States, highlighted dramatically right now by the struggle over tax cuts. The words come from President Obama at his Tuesday news conference. This country was founded on compromise, he said. And they come tonight from two outgoing United States senators, Democrat Evan Bayh of Indiana, Republican Bob Bennett of Utah. Both have had to deal with political consequences from their belief in compromise, and they join us now from the Capitol building. Senators, welcome.
Thank you, Jim.
Senator Bayh, do you agree with the President that without compromise there wouldn't even be a United States of America?
About it, Jim, from a historical perspective, the Constitutional Convention was pretty heated. The small states and the large states didn't get along, the agrarian states and the more commercial states, and of course you had the whole issue of slavery, which was extraordinarily divisive. So, you know, we almost had 13 separate countries, let alone one. So compromise was there at the inception of our nation, and it's necessary if we're going to meet the challenges that we confront today to keep America strong.
You agree with that, Senator Bennett, that it's necessary for there to continue to be compromise?
Well, of course, because there is no exclusive source of truth and wisdom in either party. And within both parties, there are compromises that have to be made. Right now, you've got a fight going on within the Democratic Party between the president and some members, maybe a majority of the House Democrats. And if they're going to come up with something that they can defend in the next election or explain to the people in the next Congress, they're going to have to compromise within their own ranks. So certainly, compromise, finding an answer, finding a solution that works is something that everybody has to do within your own party or across the aisle.
Senator Bayh, you wrote in a New York Times essay a few months ago under the headline, "Why I'm Leaving the Senate," and you said, quote, "The most ideologically devoted elements in both parties," following up here again on what Senator Bennett just said, "both parties must accept that not every compromise is a sign or an indication of moral lassitude." Why must they accept that?
Well, many people in the bases of both parties, Jim, take an all-or-nothing approach. And the irony is that very often leads to nothing. I mean, people in our caucus stand up and they want to fight. I assume people in Bob's caucus say the same thing. And I admire that passion and the devotion to principle, but if you just insist on everything, it leads to nothing. And the American people are yearning for progress. And what they can't understand is, if we can get 50% of what's good for America, why don't we do that? And then come back and work on the other 50%. This, all or nothing approach just is not delivering their kind of results. So it's the extremes, the bases in both parties are out of touch with the broad middle, the moderates, the independents, who constitute a majority.
You agree with that, Senator Bennett, that the extremes, both of the left and the right, within each of your parties are just out of touch with what the majority of the American people believe and want right now?
I don't think there's any question about it. The American people in 2008 desperately wanted change, but this is a center-right country. They did not want a strong lurch to the left or a strong lurch to the right. When they didn't get the kind of change they wanted in 2008, they voted for change again in 2010. But if you look at the poll information, it's very clear. It's not the extremes that controlled those elections. It was the independent voters in the middle who said in 2008, we don't like what we got from Bush, let's try Obama. Now they're saying, we didn't like what we got from Obama, let's try the Republicans. But in neither case are they saying, let's go to the extremes of either party, and people have got to get along in the middle.
But Senator Bayh, words like betrayal are used, too. They were used against Senator Bennett by his own fellow Republicans in Utah during the convention. And it's used by most people, not most people, but many people who have taken a principled position and then go to do a compromise. How do you respond to that, to somebody who says, hey, come on, you don't need to compromise, just hang in there?
What people want, Jim, is progress. Mm-hmm. They care about practical solutions more than ideological labels or party labels. And I have regularly used the example of my friend Bob Bennett, who is a good conservative. I mean, he's a conservative individual through and through, and yet for some people that was not enough. But my guess is, and he's more of an expert on this than I am, if he had been put up for a vote to the people of Utah or to the Republicans at large in Utah, he would have won. But because they had a caucus process, which was a lot smaller slice of that party, he was not successful, even though his position would have represented what most people wanted. So it's the triumph of ideology and partisanship over practical solutions, and that's why Bob's right. The independents have been going back and forth in a constant search for what will move us forward. That's what people want, and the political process, regrettably, is not delivering enough of that.
But Senator Bennett, doesn't ideology have to drive politics in some ways?
Well, certainly you need an ideology. You do not want to address a political question without some kind of point of view, and at some point you draw the line and say, I won't cross this. But let me tell you a quick story.
Sure.
I was being interviewed in 1976 for a job with Ronald Reagan. I did not know Ronald Reagan. I knew him only by reputation. And frankly, on that reputation, I thought he was something of an ideologue that I could not work with. As the interview went forward, and I went just out of a courtesy to the fellow who set it up, it became clear that it was going very well and I was going to get a job offer. So I finally said to the fellow, look, let me make one thing clear here. I am not a true believer. And he looked at me and he said, that's fine, neither is the governor. Ronald Reagan was the one who used to say, it's better to get 80% of what you want than 100% of nothing. But right now there are people in both parties who say, we won't take 80%, we won't take 90%, we won't take 99%. You have to be absolutely true, pure believer in the Arif Kafir sense. He wrote a whole book about that. Or we won't deal with you. And those are the kinds of people that don't get anything done. Those are the kinds of people that opposed ratification of the Constitution, if you go all the way back to the Founding Fathers. And you cannot govern a country unless you can say, all right, I will settle for 80% and work on the other 20% later.
Can I add one thing here, Jim?
Sure, yes, sir.
You know, this kind of gridlock and polarization might have been okay. It's never been ideal, but it might have been okay in a world in which America just dominated the globe, militarily and economically. But we have gathering challenges now that only compound with the passage of time when we don't meet them. So we no longer have the luxury of being this enthralled with our own, extremism politically. Because China's moving forward, India's moving forward, the rest of the world is moving forward. And so this inaction really threatens America's future. And that's why it's so important that we begin to think like Americans first. Bob's a Republican, I'm a Democrat. But when I look at Bob Bennett, I first of all see an American and a friend. Well, we got to start getting back to more of that way of thinking, because as a civil rights leader once said, we may have arrived on these shores in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. And we need to start acting that way.
But here you two of you stand. You, Senator Bayh, chose not to run for re-election. You, Senator Bennett, were defeated in a renomination contest in your state. So both of you are leaving. What does that say about the state of affairs?
Well, first I want to make it clear that the cemeteries are filled with the graves of irreplaceable men. And the Republic will survive without either one of us. Survive a little less without Evan than with me. But I think the American spirit is still strong enough that it will triumph, and that the people who are going to be in the 112th Congress, after some of them have postured a little bit, will come around and say, all right, this is what we have to do. Frankly, I'm hoping that's what happens on this tax deal.
Are you going to vote for that? Have you decided?
Yeah.
Are you going to vote for it, Senator Bennett?
Absolutely.
Are you?
It's not everything I would want, but it's certainly better than the alternative.
Senator Bayh, are you going to vote for it?
Yeah, absolutely. Jim, the alternative is to allow the taxes of every American to go up on January the 1st at a time when Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, is really worried about the state of the economy. It would be, terrible economics, and we'd be fighting it out here, or those who have taken our places in, February, March, April, at unknown risk. It just would be deeply irresponsible. So here's a perfect example where no one's going to agree with everything in there, but the alternative of doing nothing and burdening the economy with these tax increases, not just for the wealthy, but for everyone, would be deeply irresponsible.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Senators both, thank you very much.
Thank you.